Welcome to allesaufdentisch. My name is Davide Jakubowski, and today I will speak to Federico Lois. I'm an actor and musician based in Berlin, and since the corona crisis, I just try to make sense of what is going on. Federico, you want to tell us something about you?
Hi, I'm Federico. I live in Argentina, so across the Atlantic. Until the crisis hit, and I started looking at the numbers back in January. I really didn't care much about biomedical data. I have been working with data for my entire life, so this is not something, analyzing data is not something that I'm not acquainted with. Someone can say that this is my professional job, it's my 24/7 job. So I didn't have a lot of interest, but when the news started getting out from Wuhan, I was like, okay, let's figure this out. If this is going to be 2009 all over again, or if it's going to be something else. And here I am after an entire year and a half, almost going to 2 years now. I'm still looking for answers in many different sort of crappy data, and this is something that happens every day.
Right. Well, today we will talk about your modeling studies, which predicted the second wave behaviors in Europe back in 2020 October when you released it. And I think that today's topic is going to be how to really flatten the curve. Do you want to tell us? Yeah. Do you want to tell us something about your studies? What did you do?
We started working on the epidemic modeling side with Levan Djaparidze back in. He had been working before that. We actually met online. It's a funny story. But the interesting thing is, by August, we were already working, mapping out all the behaviors from the epidemic along the way in Europe, in Argentina here, where I'm based. So it was interesting to note at the time that both of us had experience on modeling, just not on epidemic model. And we had to learn over time what essentially mean, or many of the things that epidemiologists take for granted because it has been their formal training, but it wasn't for us. But because we have been working with that data for months already by August, we could actually just look at some location and even know the exact values that they got from their seroprevalence studies. So in the process of figuring out, trying to understand what the hell is going on here, what we stumbled on is a particular behavior that hasn't been noted by many people. There has been some early proponents, that people that actually knew about this, which is accounting for the difference in the mortality between the different cohorts of people under this crisis. So people do not die in the same way if they are in the 60 years old, if they are in the 20s. So there's a very big disparity between the mortality rates, the hospitalization rates on these two big cohorts that we work with. So in the process, what we actually did was actually figure out, you know, you can actually separate people in two big cohorts. Those are essentially at risk, and those that essentially are not, because the difference is orders of magnitude.
Right.
So because we did that, we stumbled onto something which is essentially the big takeaway from our modeling study, which is not every way of flattening the curve works the same. Some ways are actually quite good. Some other ways are actually very bad. And this is essentially the base of our paper, our October paper. We actually extended it with extra information on December. We have like 4 appendixes to deal with all that extra information. But the core idea is that depending on how you flatten the curve, is how you are going to end up, if you are going to end up in a situation to have a second, third, fourth, or fifth wave along the way.
Is it also depending how the mutations go?
The mutations the only thing that does is if you have a mutation that is faster, that as it has been shown in real life. Actually, we proposed the mechanism of that in October, that the virus was actually speeding up, because that's how you explain the low mortality in general that you have in the Pacific, in Asia and Oceania. So we actually proposed the mechanism of a slower virus that, because of its characteristics and the specific cohort that it attacks, you can actually miss it as the seasonal flu. There's certain parameters that allow you to miss it, but they accrue enough immunity along the way for essentially not registering when you are actually looking for, So it's interesting to note that now that we have faster viruses, you have spikes in places like India, Laos, even now Australia cannot contain it in the same way that they were able to do before. So essentially what is happening is that now that the difference, the gradient is so big between the original virus and then the next mutations, that now you have enough energy in the epidemic to actually not being able to contain it through lockdowns.
Okay. So you were seeing a difference in between the countries, also how they managed, because when they put the lockdown in order, right? And when countries did not. You also saw when people started or stopped putting children into their schools and kindergartens and stuff like that. Did it have an impact on the statistics, on the modeling?
Yes, they do, and a big one. Let's start with lockdowns. There's like this debate. It's like on one side you have the anti-lockdown guys, and on the other side you have the pro-lockdown guys. What's funny about us is that we were attacked from both sides, because essentially our result is, hey, if you are going China style, you are gonna stop the wave. It doesn't matter. You are gonna impact the wave. And I can show you examples, like instance, my location, sports, shows a very, very nice second wave with a mobility restricted curve. It's beautiful, because you see the spike up and then the lockdown and it goes in a very specific way. But the thing is, on the other side, is like you have lockdowns. So you put the lockdown in there. The outcome of that, it's actually bad, actually very bad. Because what happens is now you equalize the probability of both younger and adults to get infected. Normally what will happen, kids go to school, so they get it, they infect their family, their close family, or the parents themselves go to pick up their kids, so essentially they will be in contact and exposed. But because on the other side, these are usually young people, they have very low hospitalization rates and very low mortality rates.
Right.
On the other hand, you have the other cohort, which is the grandpas, my grandma, and my grandpa, in where, they don't go out much. You're not going to find them on the disco by any means.
In the park, right?
Yeah. And if they go outside. So it's like they have very, very low probability of being exposed massively. Okay. So what happens here is that when you lock down, you stop, you put the brake in, and essentially equalize the opportunity for everyone to be exposed by jumps, small jumps, instead of big big spreading events like going in the subway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happens is that forces it changes the way the epidemic spreads, and because epidemics are not going to stop until either you have a vaccine that is essentially sterilizing, or on the other hand, you have enough community immunity for actually to stop, you're going to have an outbreak, a latent outbreak out there. So the more you push that concept of equalizing the probability for everyone, the more time you take, but in the long run, in the time that it takes for you to build immunity, more elderly die, more of the vulnerable will die. And the reason why, yeah.
Yeah, and people with comorbidities as well, right?
Exactly. So essentially the result that had all the anti-lockdown against us, it was like, it's sacrilege that you can say that a lockdown will stop the wave. Yes, it does. The problem is what happened later.
Right.
And the reason why on the other camp, the pro-lockdown were like screaming at us is because the result is, if you let those young and healthy that have absolutely, I'm not saying no risk, because there's risk in everything, of course, but has a very, very diminished risk, orders of magnitude diminished risk. Now, essentially what happens is that these guys do not like us because we are saying, if you want to end this fast, essentially you have to do coronavirus parties.
Yeah, you have to separate, right? Because you have to say,
when you segregate those two cohorts is where you actually flatten the curve.
Exactly.
Because essentially, if you ask me what would have been now with what I know, what would have been my decision is essentially to do the same thing that you did in 2009. I know here what they said is say, okay, if you're older than 55, go work from home or don't even go. If you're a kid, they actually, in our case, it was like synchronized with the mid year vacation. Yeah. So yes, so essentially what they did is like, okay, we are going to push it forward now, get the kids out.
You're talking about swine flu right now, right?
Yeah, to the swine flu.
Yeah.
So essentially what they did is, who got infected fast? Those that were going to work.
Yeah.
Which essentially weren't the ones that were at risk, because the risk profile was already very, very, very clear. Like in this, like in here, we know about the risk profile since March 2020. The Diamond Princess was like, gives us the risk profile.
Yeah. And also the differences between the countries, right? Because if I checked on your studies, and you see in Sweden, for instance, you see how the spikes goes up and they just get lower each wave they got, like the second wave and then the Delta variants. But for instance, Australia or something, it just goes absolutely nuts. So basically what you were saying is, I mean, this is over now because we passed this already, right? Because your modeling studies just showed this is how we should have done it. And we should have known, right? Because that was something obvious. That is not, it's not like everybody should have known who was in charge. Yes. And what you see is that the more people get a chance to actually build up immunity, who are more or less resisting, the better you can deal with the virus in the outbreak, in the outcome, and the later outcome. But the more you suppress it, the more you put everybody in danger, because then it will get variants and mutations and all of these things. What do you make all of this?
The clear example.
Yeah.
Go look at Sweden.
Yeah.
Sweden have a very specific wave. We actually predicted the top of the second wave in October. We said because Sweden has been consistent over time in their methodology. They applied a methodology. I can tell you from our work, it's not the optimal. There's even more optimal than that. It's actually quite good, but it's not optimal. But because we knew what was the way that they did, we could actually predict how much time it would take to build up a new wave, and when it was going to peak, specifically in Stockholm, which is the place that we looked for.
Mm-hmm.
We predicted, and you can actually go and look at the paper, the predict the peak of the second wave on January. It was on the 4th of January.
So it was super accurate.
Super accurate. And I'm hearing experts. I'm not an expert. I'm a normal guy. I'm a normal guy that knows how to do this kind of stuff.
Now you are. Now you are.
That I see the experts saying this bug throw us everybody a curveball, so modelers couldn't get. No, that's not true. Sorry, I have to say it loudly. No, that's not true. There's people that have been doing the right and correct thing, and they can predict with months in advance what happens. We were among those.
So basically,
yeah,
continue.
But the reason that nobody is looking into that kind of information is telling. It's like
nobody wants to see
how. That now you could distrust our publication, our preprint back in October.
Yeah, but not now, because now it's like it was a prediction, right? And it was very accurate.
Yes, we did the same thing.
The only thing that could have been that you took the wrong numbers or the wrong data, right? So I mean, that could be a claim. How are you sure that your data is valid?
Yes, we actually, the key of our work is we found ways to actually figure out, this data is not correct. So the model itself will tell you there's no way this can happen. It actually happened to us here in Buenos Aires. In Buenos Aires, we did a prediction back in April 2021 about the second wave behavior. We estimated the second wave behavior back with the data that we had, which was like the start of the curve. We estimated like we were going to have per day 200 deaths per day on the peak. It was 205 on the peak. And the thing is that if you ask me now, if I could take back and I could say by the time that we were near the peak, we could actually tell you the amount of the total deaths that you would have, because we figured out, hey, this bug is actually faster than the one that the bug we estimated. So we had this gamma V3 variant here that was fast, as fast as Delta for what we know. If you look into the behavior, and you could actually estimate it, the actual deaths 4 months or 3 months in advance, because you actually needed to figure out that it's growing faster than what we estimate.
I mean, what are you making out of all of this? Because I mean, these are, of course, these are huge accusations, and I mean, where did your drive go? I mean, you saw something happening, and now there must be a discuss about it, right? Because there should be a scientific discuss about it. People who are analytical players like you, or bigger even, should talk about this. Is this happening?
To us, it's still alien. Why nobody is looking at the odd behavior in Asia, for instance? Why these countries with entirely different approaches? Because Australia, New Zealand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, China, Japan, all these guys do entirely different things.
Totally different, yeah.
There's no correlation whatsoever. And all these guys on the first one with the wild type, the first virus, they all could control. Meanwhile, you look into the other side of the world. You go to the US, to Argentina, to Sweden, to Germany, England, Spain, Italy. It doesn't matter where you look.
Yeah.
The behavior is totally different.
Yeah.
Lockdowns did absolutely nothing.
It was
So-
probably because they were exposed to the virus and didn't know.
Yes, essentially,
they
that's
reached-
our hypothesis. That's our
That's
hypothesis, and
yeah.
essentially,
The hypothesis is they reached herd immunity, or at least some part of herd immunity, way earlier than they even right.
enough so you could actually impact through suppression the epidemic behavior.
That's big news. I mean, I'm afraid we are reaching the end of these conversations, which I would like to stretch like 3 hours more, because you have a lot to say. I think it would be nice to end with the last question that I would give you, like that would be, what are you doing this for? Why are you still continuing this work? I mean, you're exposed.
Well, if you think about it, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for my kids. Because essentially, this is probably going to happen again. And the reason why is we have the ability now to measure like everything. So you can actually create a scares pretty fast. You just detect a new type of virus. Oh, hello, it's here. Probably has been here for a long time, but now you know it. So this is gonna happen over time. It's just how the things are, because now we have the ability to detect all this. Now the question is what you could do about it. If you don't build proper statistical tools to understand the real behavior, you are going to be here again and again and again.
Same.
If you think about it, because we haven't solved typhoid Mary back in the early 19s, we are now discussing if quarantine has it's legal in a sense, you know. But these kind of things actually happened before. Typhoid Mary case actually required a ruling from the Supreme Court of the United States. We actually, in our paper, we actually propose a way to sideskip that, is to solve typhoid Mary for good, for instance. But that's probably for a different talk.
For a different talk, for sure, man.
And the point is, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for my kids, because eventually there will be if not 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, but at some point in their lifetime, they will be in the same situation again. We have been in this situation before. So if I don't do it, if nobody is doing, okay, I will do it.
I love that. I really hope that we are coming to a part where we will do science again and people talk and discuss and disagree and find better ways. Yeah, right.
Disagreement is key, is how science is built.
Yeah,
right now, every day is the expert says, science says nothing.
Nothing, all right.
Science is about disagreement. It's about testing you wrong, not testing you right.
And then you're right forever. That's absolute nonsense, right? Utter nonsense. I'm encouraging everybody to look up for your studies. You can find it online on your Twitter, and we will probably also put a link in it.
Yes, definitely. We'll send you a link.
Yeah. And I am very grateful to have had this conversation with you, Federico.
Same with you.
Thanks.